Hi, everybody. Welcome in. We'd love to have you drop in chat where you're joining us from. If you want to share your organization, we'd love to hear from you. We're going to give everybody a few more minutes to join us, but feel free to tell us where you're joining us from today. Oh, Florida, Houston, Texas, very nice. These all sound much more scenic than I'm stuck in a blizzard in Omaha, Nebraska at the moment. So I'm going to live vicariously through some of you that are in your warmer weather locations. Des Moines, oh, Minneapolis, okay, yep.
San Diego.
Hey, shout out to my Maryville friends. Texas, California, yep, Iowa City, so you're getting some weather too, potentially.
Let's see.
Oh, Hawaii, there we go. Brookings, nice. I love always hearing where everybody joins us from. So if you're just popping in, drop in the chat where you're calling in from. If you want to share your org, we'd love to hear that. We're going to give everybody just another minute or so, and then we'll dive in and get started.
Oh, we got a fellow South Carolinian.
Hey, there you go.
Very nice.
Minnesota Zoo, very nice. Ooh, Laramie, all right. Also in the blizzard in Omaha, Lindsay. Hi, Lindsay.
Oh, our friends from Canada. Good to see you.
Excellent, excellent. Shocking spring-like weather today. Yeah, it was about 80 here yesterday in Omaha, and now it's about 25 and feels like 19. So welcome to the Midwest.
That time of year.
It is. It is. All right. Well, I've got about 2 minutes after, so we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Angela Altimore. I'm with BWF. I'm excited to have you join us today. We'll do introductions here in just a minute, but in the meantime, I want to just share a couple housekeeping reminders because that's always the question that folks have and where to start. So if you wouldn't mind, if you've got questions along the way, we'd love to have you toss them into the Q&A so they don't get lost as easily in the chat. And the most popular question, I'm going to probably try to say this a few times, you will indeed receive an email later in the next 24 to 48 hours with a recording of this. So yes, you will have access to it. We'll probably get a few more questions about it as we go, but I'll try to remind folks as well. So keep those questions coming in the Q&A. With that, I'm just going to quickly introduce myself. So Angela Altimore, I'm the AVP of Donor Relations and Experience at BWF. I'm normally headquartered in Manhattan, Kansas, but I'm joining today from Omaha, Nebraska. So I'm thrilled to be here with you all. I'm excited to introduce my colleague, Dave.
Thank you, Angela, and thank you to you and to the BWF team for inviting us here today to share and learn from each other. We're enjoying the collaboration. I also want to thank my 25 colleagues at PDG who stand beside me every day, and the insights that we're going to be sharing here with the group have grown out of work together. And Jill and Crystal, thank you for joining us to help share your story. You're both innovators and thought leaders in this space. So thank you so much for being here. And a heartfelt thank you to all of you that are on the line. I see many friends and some new names and locations. So we're grateful that you shared this hour with us. I'm Dave Gaspar. I had the donor recognition and engagement team at PDG. I merge strategy and storytelling and technology to help organizations deepen donor engagement. I collaborate with fundraising teams and institutional leaders to expand their vision to create immersive digital donor recognition, installations, and comprehensive plaque systems. Our team also helps with naming opportunities on our famous gift map platform. Thank you. Crystal?
Hey, everybody. I'm Crystal Oliveira Springate. I'm at Tulane University as the Executive Director for Health Systems. Prior to that, I was at LSU Health for about 8 years and did some great work with PDG that I'm excited to share with you all later.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here today. My name is Jill Stratton, and I serve as the Director of Strategic Initiatives for University Advancement at Elon University. Formerly, I was our Director of Campaign Operations, which ties into the project that we'll be talking about in our collaboration with PDG today. So thank you all for being here.
All right, thanks so much for those introductions. We're going to keep the ball rolling today, but want to start with just a couple bits of information, what we're going to talk about, right? So today we're going to really focus on a few key areas. We're going to talk about how you can really deepen the recognition concept and think about it to elevate donor experiences. We're going to share some of the trends that we're seeing and benchmarking that we're seeing in the field. And then most excited for everybody on the call is probably eager to see the showcase. So sort of a bit of a show and tell opportunity for both Jill and Crystal to share some projects that they've worked on. So we'll spend a bulk of the time sort of in those areas, and then we're going to allow time for some Q&A at the end. And we'll also try to answer those questions as we go as well. So feel free to keep those coming. And for those that didn't hear it at the beginning, you will get a recording of this after the fact. Really high level for those that are maybe new to BWF and aren't familiar with us, we are really focused on helping empower nonprofits to deliver on their promises. So initially we started out as a comprehensive consulting firm that specialized in campaigns, but in the last few years, we've really grown to be experts to the table in the annual giving side, digital marketing, donor relations and donor experience, as well as the pioneering work that we've done in data analytics. So we're a very robust collaborative organization. I'm going to let Dave share a little bit more about PDG, and then we'll get started.
For those of you that are new to PDG, PDG is a leader in donor recognition, digital engagement, and fundraising innovation. For 40 years, we've been partnering with nonprofits, educational institutions, and healthcare organizations to help them honor their donors in bold and unforgettable ways. Through boundary-pushing designs and innovative materials, and immersive digital displays, we create recognition experiences that capture hearts and engage minds. Our cutting-edge gift map platform has changed naming opportunity management and promotion for the better. At PDG, we harness storytelling to celebrate donor generosity in deeply meaningful ways, spotlighting their impact and inviting others to help build a better future. Next slide. And speaking of storytelling, we thought we would kick off with a question for you all to see where everybody's at today. How well do you feel you're using donor storytelling in your recognition program? Be honest. This will help us gauge the conversation. Give you just a couple more seconds and we'll share the results. And by the list that we saw on the page, I know some of you are doing quite well, so don't hold back. Okay, let's see the results. This is really great. Many of you feel like you're right in the middle and that you could use a little bit of improvement. Angela, what do you think? You're muted.
See, I'm trying to keep the wind noise down. Sorry, dang it. Yes, I think people were honest. I think that's
Yeah.
lovely. I think you've got folks sort of that are interested in doing better, but folks that are also have advanced from maybe where we were thinking about storytelling and recognition 5, even 10 years ago. So I think this is exciting.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so when we think about embracing recognition for donor experience, what does that mean? How do we make that a reality? I think it's really important to think about starting with the definition. So when we think about recognition, it can range from honor rolls to giving societies to the physical recognition installations. The conversation that we're going to focus on today is primarily on that physical display. So just to set that tone. And we know that it matters because it offers a chance for our contributors or supporters to feel seen and appreciated. Now, traditionally, I would argue that recognition was done to someone. An old school walnut plaque with a bronze bust being hung in a hallway to recognize a top contributor, perhaps a list of names organized by gift size to recognize your campaign donors that was installed in a new building, or the dreaded sidewalk of bricks, which often begin to deteriorate immediately upon installation. But rarely, if ever, have donors been part of the process. Rather, they're more of an afterthought or simply someone who approves the text. It's often easy for us to assume that we know what their preference is or to model our installations just in keeping with the status quo, really giving little to no thought to the long-term maintenance that such cumbersome installations like bricks need, or it's just a missed opportunity to use recognition as an instrument to really actively engage your donors. So I think really thinking about how to broaden that is a good opportunity. Now, when we think about some of the research that supports this, we use these areas a lot to think about broader donor relations, but I think it's also relevant when we think about recognition. So the firm About Loyalty over in the UK did some research, and they've identified 3 key drivers of loyalty: commitment, satisfaction, and trust. When donors love what you do, they're committed. When they're happy with the way that you communicate with them, they're satisfied. And if they believe that you deliver on what you promise, they trust you. Those are the donors that are more likely to carry on giving. Now, if you align that with what we know from Penelope Burke, and she shares in her donor-centered fundraising research, highlights the 3 things that donors want before giving again. They want a prompt and meaningful acknowledgement. They want to know how their gift is going to be used, and they want to know the results before being asked again. So when I'm working with clients to think about this, I use this lens not only to develop or deepen the donor relations efforts, but also to bring value to think about these factors when you're considering your recognition installations. So if I'm sitting down with a vendor, I might say, instead of just starting by saying, I need a wall to recognize campaign donors, I'm going to be more intentional with the purpose. I want to share with them that I want a concept that deepens the trust and really communicates impact. It should feel less like a list of names and instead feel more like a meaningful acknowledgement of their support. So it's about changing that tone in that conversation. Mm-hmm. Flipping that script. Now, when I travel, I often take pictures of recognition installations, and I know that I'm not the only person on this call that does that.
You too, Angela.
Yeah, exactly. I've even managed to get my husband to do it. He was in Paris for a work trip a few months ago, and he sent me some photos, which was lovely. So when I do this, when I look at these opportunities, I see a variety of materials and colors and logos, but all too often I'm really left unable to differentiate one installation from another. So I think about, what does that feel like from a donor? Recently, I was on a trip to a large city, and during my time there, I went to a handful of museums, I visited a college campus, and I spent some time at a zoo. I saw a handful of the same names on every single donor installation that I saw. The font was nearly the same. The installation design was rather similar on several of them. And I found myself thinking how uninspiring these unveilings of these recognition pieces must be to the donors. There's likely a reception, some remarks from the talking heads, and a note of thanks to the donors in the biggest font, and then the curtain unveils the whole wall. So if you're a donor and you're on each of these walls and you attend all of these unveilings, I question if it's a satisfying experience. I'm guessing that they blur all together. Mm-hmm. Jill, Crystal, any observations from your perspective?
I too do the same thing. I got married in Clemson in 23, and while my husband or my soon-to-be husband and I were at campus, we decided to stay at the campus hotel to see if it would be suitable for our guests to stay there. And so we're touring and we're looking at things, and they had a donor recognition in their hotel. And of course, I took pictures of it. And I mean, I think it also speaks to our sort of work, and that's just a natural thing that we do in this line of work. We look at what our peer institutions are doing and have done, and we are always looking at it at that eye of elevation, right? Oh, that's a great concept, but ooh, what if we did this? Or ooh, what if we did this to elevate or enhance it? And so I'm always grateful for the ones that do it first, because then if you're not the first one to do it, you are the one to get to come around and tweak it a little bit better. And so, yeah, I'm always looking for that. When we did our donor thing that we're going to talk about later, we did a lot of looking around in our city and taking pictures of what folks in our backyard were doing for their donor recognition. And we were inspired by one in particular. So I'm grateful for that sort of camaraderie that we have amongst each other, to build off of one another's ideas and to sort of enhance and elevate as we go along in our effort to achieve the things that, you know, we talked about earlier with Penelope's research and the research that you brought to the table, because those are the goals that I believe all of us are aiming for, and wanting to hit the mark is important. So
I would agree. Throughout our 7-year comprehensive campaign, many of us on our team were taking pictures of every piece of donor recognition that we came across. Part of my job at the time was doing some of our regional campaign events as well. So, you know, you're hosting those in museums and in big venues that do typically have some sort of donor recognition, but nothing was quite right. So we had all of these photos of things that we felt were maybe a little lackluster or didn't quite speak to our audience in the right way. And so I don't know how helpful it was, other than knowing this is not right and this is not what we want to do, and we want to think differently about how to recognize donors in this campaign. And so I think it's helpful to see the different ways to be able to recognize donors, but I think allowing ourselves to have our own creativity and know when our intuition is correct that maybe this is not the right approach for us, I think is helpful too.
And Angela, just to echo what the others are saying, we're also hearing this from the donors that are involved in the process. You know, in active recognition, something that, you know, we're all proponents of. The donors they have a voice in the process, and they do talk to us about other ways that they've been recognized at other organizations. And we've had some very frank conversations with them about, you know, well, what a bore that was. Not that they're ungrateful for being recognized, but some of these folks have given a lot of places, and you need to think about how they've been recognized before other places, and maybe there's a better way. And so we're hearing it from the donors themselves as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's clear that organizations are really missing that opportunity to just set themselves apart from the competition. You know, don't be afraid to dream big. Don't be afraid to reimagine what it is, so that it does truly stand out, and so that you're the shop that everybody wants to go and emulate and take pictures of. So next, I want to talk a little bit about how you can bring donors to the table, right? So asking questions like understanding what inspires the gift, right? What motivated them? Make them part of the process. Now, it can take longer and it can be much more challenging and frankly, sometimes frustrating, but the result can be so much more valuable when you think about the long-term relationship for that donor and your organization. So it can really be worth it if you take that time. It's about the opportunity to move simply beyond approving text and really thinking about ways to surprise and delight them. Give them a peek behind the curtain, but don't let them have full control. Now, for those that have heard this story before, you know it's one of my favorites, but it bears repeating. So I'm going to try to do my best summary of a recognition story that Penelope Burke shares. So she talks about a tour that she received of a new residential hospice house right before it opened. She went on the tour, and the director of development guided her over to one side of the room where there was a well-stocked bookcase that filled the wall. That was their recognition display. The top shelf of the books were all the same height and same thickness, and the spines were all the same gold color. On the spines were the names of the different donors. She pulled out one of the books on the shelf at random, flipped it open, but it wasn't a real book. It was just blank pages. Then she looked down a shelf and she saw another row of identical books whose spines were a bit thinner and they were silver colored. And then the row before that was the bronze colored books with even thinner lines. So when she tells this story, she imagines a different approach. She says, what if the campaign neared its goal, the staff returned to the donors, asking them, what is your favorite book? We invite you to get a copy and write an inscription on the inside front cover, as we would like to include it in the hospice's library collection. She says, I imagine donors sitting at their desks or kitchen tables, drafting their inscriptions and writing them out several times on separate pieces of paper before carefully inscribing them in their books. I cannot imagine even one donor not wanting to do this, knowing that whoever picked their book off the shelf would likely be selecting the last book that they will ever read in their life. Now, if that doesn't make you inspired to want to rethink how you can recognize folks, I don't know what will. but I bet Dave has another example that he can share.
Yeah, that is just such a wonderful story and right on target about what we should be doing today. You know, when we think about active recognition, we think of it as more than gratitude. We think about it as an invitation to really step inside the heart of the organization's mission, to see firsthand how lives are being transformed. You know, in our work, particularly on the digital side with digital donor walls, most of those donor walls have a lot of donor stories on them. And so we are constantly working with donor stories. And we've learned over the years that there's a beautiful story behind every gift. And when you can get a donor talking about their story, and maybe not even about the transformational gift that they just gave, but maybe about the first gift, because there's really something special when you learn about why somebody gave to your organization for the first time. And that can be inspiring to donors at all levels. You know, it's not about the big gift that was cultivated over perhaps decades. It's about everybody getting involved at all levels. And so we love creating those stories, helping you create those stories, and learning about how those stories come to life. And so I would just recommend that everybody dig in and involve their donors in that storytelling process. And sometimes it just is a short little quote that you get from them. It doesn't have to be a big process, but reach out to them and get that information. It will pay dividends in the display down the road and inspire others to give.
Thanks, Dave. Now, when we think about inclusive recognition, I think it's really important to think about how we handle this, right? So while names by gift level is certainly commonplace, it can also be a missed opportunity to build that sense of community and to inspire donors and gifts of all levels. So when I'm working with clients, more and more we're exploring how to embrace recognition outside the traditional dollar amount threshold. Think of it like this. If I'm an annual donor and I give $150 a year to your organization, and I'm extremely passionate about your cause, what does seeing a donor wall that highlights gifts of $250,000 and more up do to me? Do I start to look at that and wonder if my gift even matters? How you design recognition is important to think about shifting that primary focus away from dollar amounts and thinking about addressing it differently. And you'll see an example of that shortly. One of the recent examples that I love is at the Obama Presidential Center. They've provided a list of pre-approved names or pre-vetted names of historical figures that donors can pick from. So instead of thinking about naming a particular space after that donor, they have a list of individuals that they'd like to recognize. And so the donors have the ability to pick from that. And I know other organizations are starting to do the same thing, to think about how do we really want to recognize folks in a different way. And then I think the other thing that I can share just from a personal example is the importance of getting somebody's approval if you're going to name something after them and they are not tied to the gift. So I learned from experience that that is a very important step to take. Not everyone wants their name up in bright, shiny lights in big fonts. And so making sure that you're taking time to ask the question, if somebody wants to honor them, that you're upfront and having that question can be very, very important. Dave, anything else on this one you want to chime in on?
We actually have seen a lot of organizations transition to what we're calling a donor sea of names, an organic placement of donor names that fade in and out on the digital screen, so that everybody can be recognized. And if the organization has a culture where they want to highlight the folks that gave a little bit more, then their names might just be bigger on the screen and stay on the screen a bit longer. But when you create this donor sea, which we have a picture of in a subsequent slide, you'll see that the names, it really creates a sense of community and there are no specific levels called out.
Yeah, I think this is a trend that you're going to continue to see. It wouldn't surprise me at all. So let's talk a little bit about experiential, right? What does this mean? How do we bring this to life, right? There's a few examples here on the screen, but I want to share a couple that I think are really interesting. So one isn't related to recognition at all. And I think we talked earlier about how we take inspiration from all sorts of places. So I recently read an article about the Minnesota Wild hockey team and the NHL. They invite their fans when they come to a game, they invite their fans that come from all over the state to bring in a small bottle of water from their local lakes, ponds, rivers, what have you, and they dump it into a bin at each game. That water is then filtered and they use that to make the ice for the hockey rink. Now, imagine looking down at that rink and thinking that a little piece of your heart is out there in the ice, right? What a lovely connection point. So how can you find a way to replicate that when you think about your recognition? The other example that comes to mind is if you've ever been to the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C., how often and how common it is to do rubbings of the space, right? So maybe you have a wall, some of the older walls in particular, maybe they have that dimensional text. So consider testing this out. Can you take a rubbing of some of those old bronze walls, especially if you're going to go through a retiring process where you're going to be maybe replacing the wall or upgrading it, giving it a refresh or refurb? Or maybe the donor can't be there in person to see the wall. This is a lovely opportunity to make it a little bit simpler than or different than just a photo, right? So thinking about that. Now, I will say, I wouldn't recommend doing this at a reception where you have 100 people gathered and just letting them loose on your wall and taking rubbings themselves. So I think, take it with a grain of thought. Logistics are important, but finding ways to involve donors to help them in that installation process, I think can be really, really exciting. I think Dave has a time capsule example he wanted to share.
Yeah, two other ways that are very popular for us. We love history walls for our clients, mainly because they are an incredible touch point for long-term donors and volunteers. People that really know your organization can help you choose the content for these history walls, and you're really inviting them in, giving them a role in the process, and it really deepens the relationship and helps you build trust with them. They get to see firsthand what their generosity what contributed to doing and how the organization has been built over time. So history walls, we highly recommend. They take a little bit more time, so give yourself more time than you would a typical donor wall, but really involve your volunteers and your donors in that process. The second one is the time capsule idea. We love this idea because, well, let me explain it first. The idea is you take a group of donors and invite them to put some sort of handwritten note or story or small memento into a time capsule that will be embedded behind the donor wall when it is time to have it installed. This creates a direct connection between the donor and the donor wall, and it really transcends generations. It's going to be in there for probably 20 years plus, and what a wonderful experience for everybody that eventually will be part of the organization in the future to see what motivated people years ago and to pull that all apart at some point in the future. And so it's just a remarkable thing. It's easy to do. It really doesn't cost much at all to accomplish, but creates deep connections with your donors.
I love that example. I think that's fabulous. So it sort of ties into the next phase that we want to talk about, and that's really thinking about integrating technology, right? So not only thinking about what they look like, but then what message do your walls convey, right? It's important to seek ways to incorporate a gentle lesson on philanthropy. So instead of just the laundry list of names, which is sort of what the traditional model had been, really thinking about how can you set it up so that anyone who spends time looking at these pieces walks away inspired, right? Think of it like a living piece of art. You want to leave them thinking, right? It's not just, oh, yep, there's scan down, find my name, it's spelled correctly, and then they move on, right? It's an opportunity to really leave them thinking. And so I'm going to turn it over to Dave and the rest of the panel who are going to share, move into sort of that storytelling phase. So I'm excited to pass the baton to them and let them take us from here.
Thank you, Angela. Next slide. Before we get into the real life examples, we just have 4 trends that we want to touch on that we think are driving donor recognition in 2025. The first one is the move to digital and interactive donor recognition, hybrid donor walls, that are more immersive, better at storytelling. I mean, just imagine walking into a space where generosity comes to life, where the stories of impact are just rippling across a digital canvas. You really are inviting people in to see and feel the difference that their dollars are making. You know, we like to believe that gone are the day of mundane static displays that just blend into the background. You're going to see 2 displays in a minute that just jump out at you, invite you into the experience. You know, whether it's interactive donor walls that are weaving stories or actual sculptures that help bring the stories to life. You know, the great thing about digital donor walls is that the story evolves over time. They can grow with your giving. So unlike traditional walls, these tributes really capture new gifts and new milestones and deepen legacies over time. And so it's really a tool that can grow with your organization rather than having it set in a particular time. Thinking beyond the wall, we've been trying to do this for years, and you're going to hear from Crystal in a second about one of our projects where we've built a sculpture that represents the giving that donors have made. And we like to think that the storyline of the recognition can shine through the design. Every element of the sculpture can be a symbol of the mission and of the impact. Recognition can also be public art. Sculptures can honor donor contributions in a visually stunning way. For example, we're working with the university right now to create a public sculpture that is large enough to walk through. And from a distance and from above, it'll be a symbol of academic excellence. But once you're inside, you'll experience the transformative power of philanthropy. It's a really different approach. And of course, you can use kinetic and illuminated installations. In many of our projects for healthcare organizations, particularly children's hospitals or children's units, we're using LED lighting to draw the children in so that the parents can come in close and have that moment of pause and really understand the power of philanthropy by interacting with the display. But in a setting with kids, you've got to attract the kids in first, and that's just a little trick that we've learned. You know, strategic approaches to naming opportunities are very big. Many of the people here on this call we're working with to organize and manage and track their naming opportunities at scale. We recommend conducting an inventory of your naming opportunities and benchmarking against your peers. I would evaluate your naming policies, see if they align with best practices. Somebody like Angela could help you with that sort of thing. And engage your donors with digital tools and visual proposals. You really have to try to bring the naming opportunities to life in a donor-centric way. And finally, we've spent some time already talking about active donor participation in recognition, so I won't spend too much time in here, but I would say when you can engage a group of stakeholders in the process, volunteers or donors, it will make it more rich for them. You want to invite them in to help tell your story of philanthropy and think of ways to extend the experience beyond the donor wall. For a lot of our clients, we're using QR codes within the display, or you can get a little bit more fancy and use augmented reality experiences to propel the experience beyond the donor wall. Really too much to talk about in a 1-hour presentation, but I'm very excited to turn it over to my good friend, Crystal Oliveira. She and I worked together with the PDG team and her team when she was at LSU on a project that combined digital donor recognition and a 30-foot tall donor recognition sculpture. Crystal, would you like to share with the group how we helped you bring this to life?
Yeah, absolutely. So I met Steve Kleinman at PDG at a conference. My first conference as I was transitioning from alumni fundraising into healthcare fundraising. And you know, I was sharing with Steve all the big plans that I had, and you know, he was listening and was, you know, kind of like, wow, that's a lot. And about 5 years later, Steve is on here, he might be able to correct me, but I think it was about 5 years later, I was finally able to call Steve and say, all right, we're ready. And you know, I had my upbringing at the Citadel in Charleston, South Carolina, and they did such a phenomenal job in their stewardship efforts. They had a donor relations department, and honestly, the raising money there was really easy. People that I was assigned to manage would pick up the phone and call me and say, okay, I'm at this level and I want to be at the Star of the West level. What do I need to give this year to make it to that next giving level of recognition? And I believe, and another thing that they did, going back to making sure that your donor recognition includes all giving. Later, they began to include annual givers at any amount that were giving consecutively. So that person that's giving you $100 every year, finding a way to recognize them in big ways is important. And the Citadel finally did roll that out while I was still there. They called it the Order of the Tartan, because the Citadel has this long history of the tartan from Scotland and their regimental band and pipes entremont that goes all over the world to play, and it's super recognized. And so they made these massive sashes out of the original tartan that they got from Scotland, and they sashed these individuals that had 25 years of consecutive giving or more. And I cannot tell you how many times my phone rang about how honored they were to be inducted. They would come to the events wearing their sashes on campus. But the other nice thing is you get phone calls from someone who thought that they were pretty close. And then you were able to have a conversation with those individuals in a positive way and get them on their way to being Order of the Tartan individuals. And so when I came to LSU and we were building things for the first time, all of those things were going into my mind about inclusive recognition that included as many people as possible. This experience that we're trying to connect everyone to, and how do we do that in a donor recognition way, in a stewardship way that keeps the giving going, that keeps the conversation going, and that brings them into the heart of your organization, as Dave and Angela have said. And so we spent a lot of time asking a lot of questions, asking students questions, asking faculty questions, asking our donors questions. We took a lot of pictures of what our partners were doing. We went and saw the Children's Museum here, and they had a local artist. Louisiana loves things to be very local and very supportive of the local businesses. I've never lived anywhere where that has been at the heart of a city more than it is in New Orleans. And so they had a glass art blower that had blown these glass beads that recognized the big donors that had made their move from a smaller location to the bigger location possible. And we thought, man, beads is such a New Orleans thing, and LSU embraces it on so many different levels. And so we started talking to PDG about the beads. In LSU colors. We had originally thought about glass, but then of course we started these conversations in 2020 when like cost of everything was going crazy, and we landed on, I think, maybe some metal. And then we were also, you know, we wanted to include that digital piece that could continue to tell the story. We could highlight our scholarship recipients. We could highlight other campaigns, and really wanted to use this digital piece to continue the impact, to show that impact of the giving. And then recognizing donors at all levels, annual giving levels, major giving levels, you know, making sure that the piece really showcased what the impact the donors were making. And then we tied it to their mobile devices, and they were able to receive messages on their phones about different scholarship recipients. But, you know, we were developing this in COVID, and so we really were thinking about how do we bring the campus to their homes, especially during a time where no one can come to us. But then that also, brought up, well, what about all those donors that never could come because of their age, because of health concerns, because of X, Y, and Z? And gosh, isn't this just a great way to go in general, because you have all of those components when there's not COVID. And so we really saw the benefits of moving in this digital age and working to bring those pieces of campus to people's homes. And it's a great piece, and it really brought out the culture and the experience of LSU, and lots of positivity. We developed little beads that went home with people who supported our campaign, and people wear them, or they have them on their office, or whatever they want to do with them. But it was better than the traditional, you have a structure and you carve people's names on it. This was such an interactive thing that can evolve over time. I mean, this structure can lend itself to so many different ideas and campaigns and things as the university evolves. But we did take a lot of time into thinking about LSU, the colors, every detail was really well attended to. And then we chose to place the sculpture in our new student housing that was going up, which was a brand new build for the campus. And then we built out the naming plaques that Dave just showed above, where if they named the conference room or they named the whatever, the naming plaques also tied into that bigger giving sculpture, and it kind of was able to lend itself across multiple campaigns and giving efforts for LSU, which is great when you can have that longevity, because then the return on investment just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And that was key in making the pitch for the financing of the structure, was being able to tie it into those bigger ways and demonstrate the return on investment.
I just want to share one aha moment that I had when we were talking through this the other day, and they were sharing this. I think for those of you on the call that struggle to figure out, how do I come up with a gift to give to the donors to take home? That I didn't realize that partners like PDG can help with this. So Dave, can you maybe just speak very quickly about the bead that you all helped create for the donors to sort of take home with them? Because I don't think that people necessarily think about that being a service that you all offer.
Yeah, it is certainly a unique approach. We're not big proponents on spending dollars on little tchotchkes and things like that. So we really thought long and hard when working with Crystal and with others about how to create something that is going to be really meaningful to the donor and helps tell the story of why it's important that they're involved. In this particular case, we were able to create a what's called an object recognition tool on the iPhone. So there's an iPhone app that pairs with it. And when you point it at the object, it's been trained to recognize the object. And from there, when you scan it, a story comes to you from LSU Health. And so those stories can be updated periodically, but it's not something that is just a piece of passive recognition, like a plaque that might sit on somebody's office credenza. It is something that continues to be engaging over time. And so that's, an experience that we were trying to create for LSU and others. Just to get back to the 30-foot tall sculpture, we thought long and hard about where to place that. It was important to us that it was something that was going to be viewed from the outside, and the people would be walking by and say, wow, what is that? And want to come inside and see the story that was on the digital display and be drawn into the display. And when we were down there installing this, we saw students and others come through and take their picture with the display. You want to create an Instagrammable moment if you can, or people generate excitement. And time again, we've seen donors waiting for their face or somebody that they know come up on the digital display or with this very interesting sculpture and take a picture with it. In other cases, we've created other sculptures where they've been, in a university setting, they've become these good luck objects that people rub on the nose. Like we've got a chrome horse that we built for SMU and of their mascot. And it's become something that they rub on the nose for good luck when they walk by. And so these things can carry on and serve multiple purposes. But I know that we're here at about 12:45 Central. So I want to share this great project that we had the opportunity to do with Jill at Elon. And the interesting thing about Jill's project for me is that when we came and met with the Elon team, they knew that this was going to be an investment. It was going to have to last for a long time. So we worked very hard to create a tool that will evolve with them over time. And if you'll see on this digital donor wall, it's got 5 screens, but there is a touchpad on the front of it. And that allows Jill's colleagues to come in and change the display over time and show different types of content that serve different departments' needs. And so with that, I want to share this time with Jill to tell her story.
Thank you, Dave. This was a really exciting project. Like I mentioned, we had taken a lot of pictures of things that we didn't think were going to work. And so it was nice to be able to brainstorm with partners in PDG to figure out what was going to work for us. So this was a digital recognition tool that we used for our comprehensive campaign that concluded a couple years ago. And we wanted something just beyond that traditional plaque. We had 4 main priorities of this campaign that you can see on the screen here. 2 of those 4 main priorities had to do with student scholarship funding. And so that obviously takes us outside of traditional buildings. There was not one facility that we said, oh, we have to do something in this space. We ultimately landed on being able to do this display in our student center. We thought we have great traffic there. People are in and out of that building all of the time. This is a great opportunity for us to use this digital donor recognition tool to be able to educate people about philanthropy. It's not just a typical donor listing. And so how can we infuse the messaging around why this campaign matters and why this is important so that we can start to educate our student population around philanthropy, so that when they are alums and they do receive those calls from us, they know, oh, I can support all of these different priorities at Elon. All of this ties together. We really had storytelling as kind of a through line through all of our campaign events and programs. As I mentioned, to focus on student scholarship lends itself to storytelling. And so we really wanted the same to be true in our donor recognition. We did not want a display that would broadcast audio all day, since this is our student center and we have some colleagues who work in very close proximity to this display. But we did want to have the option to include videos, to dive a little bit deeper, to be able to share some of the stories around the campaign, those stories of impact that are always so special to be able to hear. So Dave mentioned we have a little control panel at the bottom. When folks are able to use that, they can kind of navigate through the display. They can click one level deeper beyond just the slideshow that transitions kind of throughout the day. And they have the option to learn more about each priority through those stories of impact. So we have a little video clip that, provided technology is on our side, we're going to try to show you to give a sense of kind of what we were able to communicate in this display.
Elon has helped shape me into the person that I am today, who is committed to serving the greater good. Without my scholarships, my experience would not have been possible, and I cannot imagine not having the experience that I had and meeting the people that I've been able to meet and going to the places that I've been allowed to go. So I definitely would not be who I am without those scholarships. When you give to the Elon Leads campaign, and to scholarships in particular, you are changing lives. I know, because you changed mine.
So this is just one example of one of the videos that we were able to include in the display. PDG created these great templates for us that really focus on the visual component, so that we can highlight the stories. It's 5 big display screens all together that can kind of be broken down in different ways. And so it really is visually eye-catching when you walk in the facility. It makes you want to stop and engage with the display, which was part of our intention. Each slide, as Dave mentioned earlier, also does include a QR code. So if people are busy, they're on their way to class, they're on a campus tour, maybe a prospective family, they're able to just kind of take a quick scan of the QR code. That leads them to our website where we have all of this information stored as well. So they're able to dive a little bit deeper. You'll see that, we kind of wanted some intentional focus on some of our larger donors to the campaign. And so we do have some donor spotlights around some of those bigger priorities, but we did also want this to be inclusive. And so we did include a slide around the importance of annual gifts, being able to highlight annual donors and how their cumulative impact makes a difference. We also did something similar for planned giving donors as well. Throughout the campaign, we were using very inclusive language like this is our university campaign and that everybody can have a place in this campaign, not just the $1 million donors. And because we were not really limited by a character count using a digital display, we were able to bring that to life and make everyone feel like they were a part of this recognition as well. Of course, we needed some sort of traditional donor listing because that is what a lot of our donors expect of us. And so we were able to include that as one of the template options. So this is kind of an example of what that looks like. But instead of just highlighting the top 5, 10, 20 donors to the campaign, we were able to highlight almost the majority of our 30,000 donors to this campaign. We were able to use this digital recognition to scroll through a lot of different names at giving levels that would not have been included if it was just a stagnant plaque on a wall somewhere. This also has a QR code. It is not the full donor listing of all 30,000 names because that would be a lot to include, but the QR code does take everyone to a full website donor honor roll for our campaign so that people can still feel like my $10 gift made a difference and I'm included as part of this recognition. And that was really important to us too.
Thank you, Jill. That's great.
Yeah.
It looks like we've got a few questions. I'm mindful of time. We've got about 9 minutes left. I've got a few questions that have popped in the Q&A, so I'm just going to kind of throw those out. I'll try to go in the order that they came across. So we've got somebody that works with donors at large companies or organizations, think major gifts. How do you recommend recognizing a group of people, for example, a company versus individual donors? I'll start and then open it to certainly.
Looks like Angela might have frozen there, so I can start and then throw it to Jill and Crystal. In our experience, when you're recognizing donors for corporates, there's a couple different things. You do not want to include logos because logos tend to change over time. And you can also use digital donor recognition to recognize that group of people, a list of the folks at the individual corporations that were involved, and then list them in the digital display to show their impact. Jill and Crystal, are you still with me, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we are here.
Oh, good. I'm sure Angela will be right back. There's another question from my good friend Dina Silverstein at Hadassah. We love this question. When you're thinking about digital donor recognition, how do you account for damage or vandalism of the wall? I would say that we've been very lucky that we haven't had any damage or vandalism of our walls. We certainly did think about the sculpture at LSU. Being in a student housing facility, we wanted to make sure it was safe for everybody. And then, the weather can get a little unpredictable in New Orleans. So we thought about having a glass display next to the windows. But these are usually, Dina, displays that are inside. And so we have not done any digital donor recognition outside. And so we do feel like these are usually protected.
Yeah, I would say the same thing with the stuff at LSU. It's inside the student housing
Yeah,
building that has security. You can't get in without a card, a student card.
yeah. Jill, have
We
you had
haven't-
any trouble at Elon?
We have not experienced any issues with our display. That was something we were kind of concerned about just because the student center is a high traffic area and there are
Yeah.
often events in that area. And so one of our concerns was if there's a registration table that kind of bumps up to where the display is, our elbow is going to be flying and damaging the screens. And we really have not had any issue. We made sure that everything was kind of above a typical chair rail height. And so anything that would be kind of that table height wouldn't necessarily have bumped. PDG also designed kind of the wooden casing to where it's a slight angle at the bottom, so it prevents anyone from being exactly up against the screens. So there's kind of a built-in barrier there as well. We have not had any major kind of technology glitches or anything like that. I think we've had this up for over 2 years now, and there's maybe been 2 times where I've walked by or gotten a text from a colleague that's like, maybe do a technology refresh. This one screen doesn't feel like it's working with all of the others. And that's a quick email to PDG and it's fixed that day. And so we really have been lucky on the technology front.
That's great. That's great. Angela, welcome back. We are just working our way through the questions here. Do you have anything that you wanted to add about corporate recognition?
Sorry, I'm not sure when exactly I froze. The internet just completely crashed, so it kicked me out. I think I would just add that when I think about them, I think about working them in amongst your traditional donors. And I think making sure that your naming policies account for logo usage and what that's going to look like, so that you have you strike the right balance of meeting the needs and the expectations of our corporate partners, but also not making it feel too much like it's just a complete billboard of advertisements.
Yeah.
So striking that balance is important.
Yeah, yeah. Moving on to this, the question about physical donor walls versus virtual donor walls and virtual donor recognition. I'm sure that Angela, many of your clients have these, and Jill and Crystal, you must have virtual recognition, websites with donor names and donor stories on them. From my perspective, the donors tend to be in a different frame of mind when they're on campus with you. And so that's something to consider. So when you catch them at home with an email or when they're visiting their website, they are mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, and colleagues. But when they are on campus, boy, do they get into that alumni and donor frame of mind. The same is true in a healthcare setting when a donor is on site looking at some of the work that they've helped fund. And so I would just say that the experience is different when you're on site.
Yeah, and I would say the other thing is in having something on campus, it builds that culture of philanthropy from the bottom up, right? And so you're thinking about recognition, but you also need to think about the students that are interacting with this donor piece, this donor recognition, and they're seeing the philanthropy or they're being impacted directly by the philanthropy. Those are your next generation of givers that you're cultivating with these donor recognition pieces, whatever you're doing. And so you really need to be thinking about that when you're going through the planning stages of what you're putting together, because you are contributing to that culture of philanthropy at your institution and engaging in these ways. Virtually, it's hard to do that. I don't know, I think the digital components being added gets at the virtual attempts, but to move the whole thing virtually, I don't think we're there yet, or necessarily would go there 100%.
Yeah, we mirrored our digital display on our website. And so the majority of the content that can be seen on the digital display also had a home on our campaign website, which was a great way to repurpose that website when we were not actively in campaign mode. And so our donors who are spread out, majority of them are not in Elon, North Carolina. So they were able to interact with that in a different way and be able to kind of see those stories differently. I don't know that we would have done just the digital component. I think to Crystal's point, there's something nice about having that physical installment somewhere on campus just for the educational piece to the student population too, around why philanthropy matters and why it's important and that it's a priority of your institution.
Thank you, Jill. Angela, do we have any more time for any questions, or are we wrapping things up?
I think we are wrapping it up. I think we've got a quick poll at the end that we wanted to ask folks. Just to sort of understand what they're interested in learning more about. We've talked about lots of different things today, whether that's a new topic from a webinar perspective or just something you want to dive deeper into. So apologies that my internet cut out, but I'm grateful it was at the very end. And I know you were in good hands with the rest of the folks. So we're really grateful for y'all for joining us today. The recording will be shared in the next 24 to 48 hours, so be on the lookout for that. And yes, if we didn't get to your question, I know there were a couple that got unanswered. We'll provide that information. And there's our contact information. So feel free to reach out, connect with us on LinkedIn, shoot us an email. We're happy to offer insights and perspectives from different lenses. So we're excited that you all joined us today. We're very grateful we had such a strong turnout for something so specific, but yet really excited. So Thanks for joining us.
Rachel, if you want to drop your question to me, I'm happy to share with you the process we went through on the takeaway.
Thank you all.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Dave.
everybody.
This was
Thank
great.
you all.
Thanks, Jill
Bye.
and Angela. Have a great rest of your day.